Hello, students, and welcome back. Today, we're going to do a quick revision of a very important chapter from your economics syllabus, food security in India. Now, have you ever really stopped to think about where our food comes from every day? It's a huge and complex process, and ensuring that everyone gets enough food is absolutely essential for our country's well-being. So, let's get started. Here's our plan for today's revision. First, we'll quickly recap what food security really means. Then, we will look into the problems that happen when food is not secure. After that, we will revise India's amazing system to make sure everyone gets food. And finally, we'll touch upon some important government programs and wrap things up. Ready? All right, let's begin with the most basic question. Before we can understand the problems and solutions, we need to be very clear about the meaning of food security. You can think of it as a concept that stands on three very important pillars. So what is it? See, food security is not just about getting 2 meals a day. The official definition says it is the availability, accessibility, and affordability of food to all people at all times. I want you to remember these 3 words: availability, accessibility, and affordability. They are the key at understanding this entire chapter. Think of it like a 3-legged stool. If even one leg is weak, the stool will fall. It's the same with food security. The first pillar is availability. This means there has to be enough food in the country, whether we grow it ourselves, import it, or have it stored in government godowns. The second pillar is accessibility. This means food should be within the physical reach of every person. And the third, and perhaps the most crucial pillar, is affordability. People must have enough money to be able to buy that food. All 3 must be present for a country to be food secure. Okay, so we know what food security is. But what happens when this system is disturbed? Now, let's look at the serious problem of food insecurity, which is what happens when our food supply is under threat. Often, the biggest threat comes from nature itself. Imagine there is a terrible drought or a massive flood. What happens? Well, the food production goes down. This leads to a shortage of food in the market. And basic economics tells us that when something is scarce, its price goes up. This makes it very difficult for poor people to buy even basic food. Now, if this food shortage becomes very severe and goes on for a long time, it can lead to the most terrible situation of all, a famine. A famine is a period of widespread starvation, where a large number of people die not just from hunger, but also from diseases that attack their weak bodies. And our own country has seen a very tragic example of this. The Bengal famine of 1943 was one of the worst in human history. It resulted in the death of about 3 million people. That's 30 lakh people, in just the one province of Bengal. It's a very sad reminder of what can happen when food security fails. Now, here is something very important to understand. You might think the Bengal famine happened simply because there was not enough rice. But look carefully at this table. The total amount of rice available in Bengal in 1943 was actually more than what was available in 1941. So what went wrong? It was not a crisis of availability, but a crisis of affordability. The price of rice shot up so much that poor people, like agricultural laborers, simply could not afford to buy it, even though the rice was there in the market. This brings us to a very important question. Who are the people most affected during a food crisis? Well, in rural areas, it is usually the landless laborers and small farmers. In cities, it's the casual workers who do low-paying jobs. We also find that some social groups, and most importantly, pregnant women and children under 5 years of age, are the most vulnerable to malnutrition. Now, this food insecurity often leads to hunger, and hunger can be of 2 types. First, there's chronic hunger. This is a long-term problem for people who have such a low income that their diet is always inadequate. Then, there is seasonal hunger. This is related to the seasons of farming. For example, a farm worker might have work during sowing and harvesting, but no work and no income for several months in between. That is seasonal hunger.
So we have understood the problem of food insecurity and its terrible consequences. Now let's move to the solution. Let's revise the amazing system that India has built over the years to fight this problem and make sure a famine like Bengal never happens again.
The very first step India took was to make sure we produce enough food for our own people. This was achieved through the Green Revolution. By using new agricultural techniques and high-yielding seeds, the production of wheat and rice increased dramatically. This made India self-sufficient in food grains. But just growing enough food is not enough, is it? You also need a system to distribute it to the people who need it. So the second part of the solution is a very carefully designed system, which has 2 main parts: the buffer stock, and the public distribution system, or PDS. So, how does the government get the food grains for the system? It starts with something called the minimum support price, or MSP. Before the farmers even sow their crops, the government announces a price at which it will buy the grain from them. This gives the farmers a guarantee and encourages them to produce more. All the grains that the government buys from the farmers at MSP are stored in huge godowns. This stock of food grains, mainly wheat and rice, is called the buffer stock. It is managed by the Food Corporation of India, or FCI. This stock acts as a safety reserve to be used in times of calamity or to distribute among the poor.
And how does this food from the buffer stock reach the people? That is where the public distribution system, or PDS, comes in. You must have seen ration shops or fair price shops in your localities. These shops are part of the PDS. Through this network, food grains are sold to poorer families at a subsidized price, which is much lower than the market price.
So the PDS is the main system for distribution. But to make this food security net even stronger and to reach more people, the government has launched several other key programs. Let's quickly go over some of them. Some very important schemes you should remember are the Antoda Anna Yojana, which targets the poorest of the poor, the Annaprena scheme, which is for needy senior citizens, and the historic National Food Security Act, which made access to food a legal right for many people. We also have crucial nutrition programs like ICDS for young children and mothers, and of course, the midday meal scheme, which provides hot meals to children in schools. So, as we conclude our revision, let's remember the main takeaway from this chapter. True food security is not just about growing more and more food. It is equally and perhaps more important to have a fair system of distribution so that food can reach every single person in our society. This entire system, with its focus on production, government procurement, and public distribution, is what works every single day to keep our nation food secure. It's a massive and continuous effort. And this leaves us with a final question to think about. What is our role as students and responsible citizens in making this system stronger and ensuring a food-secure India for everyone? Think about it. Thank you.